Hello, everyone. This is Michaela, and you're listening to the End All the Things podcast. As a life coach and facilitator, I work with individuals and groups to empower their best selves to shine to the betterment of all involved. My goal is always to bring you closer to trusting the voice inside of you that is authentically yours. My job here is no different. In my journey through life, I continue to meet people who use their authenticity, their gifts, to grow, change, and serve through professional and personal endeavors. These people and their stories become my gift to you, for I cannot keep a good thing to myself, and I believe that they may inspire a part of your story to evolve. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of End All the Things. Today, you are going to have so much fun getting to know my guest. I met her because I fell in love with the title of her book and the cover, and I looked into her, and she is so full of spice of life. And for me, a girl who wears mostly black, this is a good thing. She brings a lot of color to the world. But what really drew me to her is her mission to help people become the best versions of themselves. And for a person who's in the business of exploring and developing human potential, you know this was right up my alley. Today you will meet Aliki Samone. She is a dynamic entrepreneur fueled by a blend of, get this, science and creativity. You know I love that blend. As a multi-talented artist, she is a singer, a songwriter, a creative author, and paints abstract art usually in the form of murals. But get this, she's also an aerospace engineer, okay? So she takes this love of science and creativity and her love of nature, and she brings it all into her book, which is called Conquer Your Summit: How to Build a 5-Year Plan and Live Your Best Life. She has put so much love and intention into building this summit method so that you can have a holistic approach to your life. In our conversation today, we will cover this and so much more. You will hear me totally dork out. You will hear lots of laughter, but what you will definitely hear is a conversation between two women who truly believe in your potential. So without further ado, I offer to you Aliki Samone and all the things. All right, friends, I have a very special guest for you today, and her name is Aliki. It's not Aliki like I thought it was when we first started, but we jumped into a great conversation about names. So thank you so much for joining us. And I would love for you to just share with our listeners today, who is Aliki?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Aliki, and I am many things. I like to introduce myself as an author, artist, musician, and then add things like, yes, I'm a project manager. I work in different industries. Yes, I'm an entrepreneur trying to build up different businesses. But I find all too often we define ourselves by our job, like your career. And that's what people always want to say. So I've decided, I may do all of this author work and artist work as my passions and potentially side things, but that's what I love. That's who I am. That's who I am right here, with you today, constantly wanting to be and I am. So I am many things. I am a full right-brained, creative, driven to, fill the world with color person. And then I am also someone who has had an entire background in engineering, in aerospace, designing spacecraft, going into project management, working in self-driving cars. And I fill this science part of my brain over here. And I love to take all of that and figure out ways to talk to people like you to hopefully help others who maybe, have a lot of things going in their life and figure out ways to make things happen, which I'll close my intro bio statement with. Yes, I did say author first, and I'm an author of the book, Conquer Your Summit: How to Build a 5-Year Plan and Live Your Best Life. And it's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, but hopefully lots of other great topics to help people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. We talked before recording about how we can bullet point who we are and just hit the list. But it's the thing behind that list that drives us. And it sounds like for you, that's the creativity, the color of the world, and the make sense and order of the world in this engineering brain. So my question is, because I think I'm pretty 50-50 brained as well, depending on the day, I might shift a little right left. But I find conflict in my brain sometimes because I have a hard time doing the creation, the creativity part, and then the implementation on the same project, or you know what I mean? Like balancing the both. And I have to stop and go, okay, great job. Now it's time to use the other side of your brain. And I think particularly with a background in manufacturing, I've worked with a lot of engineers, a lot of architect type mindsets, and there's not a lot of wiggle room in a lot of those minds, right? Like to see beyond what's in front of them. And I don't, that's very general and not fair. That's not a true statement. But it in the idea of systems processes, meeting criteria and ratio, um, limits our creativity sometimes. And correct me if I'm wrong, please. Like, don't like let's speak truth into this. But how do you balance those two parts?
That's a great comment. And I think, you know, a lot, not everyone has this need and, extreme desire to need to
Right.
balance those parts. I mean, he kind of mentioned it earlier. Yes, not all engineers are the same.
Correct.
I'm an example of that.
Correct. And
um,
said with
but
love to all engineers out there, not a dig
oh,
at all, right? But there
of
is a
course.
mindset that makes them exceptional, that can make them exceptional in the field, which can sometimes preclude the right side of the brain, like, the other part of who we are.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, it's something where we you have to give it time and focus. I think society has gotten a lot better in the last 5 years, even a
mhm,
couple of years, in being more accepting and more embrace everyone for how they think, how they want to be,
mhm.
where they want to put themselves on the,
Right.
the
Different
bookshelf of
learning
life.
styles or like the
Right.
DISC assessment and different personality types combining to create success and effectiveness. Yeah. So there is
Exactly.
definitely more of that. I think that's a
And
great observation.
exactly, because in the past, I feel there there has been so much more pressure to be something and be that thing, maybe be that thing
Mhm.
for your whole life, or have a certain thought process, or you're not allowed to change. And I think it's only recently that we're learning how to balance both sides, or that it's okay to think about them. But what I want to,
Yep.
actionably leave you with is um you actually have to think about it. You have to try. If I it's so easy for me to just be like, okay, I've got my business. These are things I want to do for my business. This is the task, or my engineering side, or, my project management side. I could fill all my time doing that. It's easy, especially in a world that's fed by money, where you're wanting to, oh, how can I do this, or get higher, or this,
Hmm.
acceleration. You actually have to take time and ask yourself, what are what's the other half, like, if you find yourself being a very analytical person, what are the things over here that are the creative, or, the right brain side, and
Hmm.
how can I actively bring them into my life? How can I actively give myself space and
Right.
allowance to be this person? So
Yeah.
I think, to answer your question, it's not something that just magically comes natural for most people.
Hmm.
And like most things in life, you actually need to think about it and try and bring that balance.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they always become the back burner. You hear so
Yeah.
many people talking about, how do I get my passions to be front and center? How do I, you know,
Hmm.
make my creative life successful? Well, you do it when you put focus into it.
That's right. And thank you so much. That was beautifully put. And I love it because we don't take the time to pause. Okay. On that to-do list, there are 50,000 things on that to-do list. And if we listen to the world, the media, the news, everything, our neighbors, the list is going to be relentless. It is relentless, right? I have 50,000 things I could do. The question is, what do I want to do? And it doesn't mean what do I want in a hedonistic way, in like a, ooh, what's going to feel good? Because sometimes it's, I want tomorrow to have some time to choose what I do with my life. That means I'm going to work my butt off today in a way that might not feel pleasant, but I know that tomorrow is important. And it's the ability to choose and say, what I'm doing today matters for tomorrow. And then if we bring it in and say, does it make me happy, these choices I'm making? Does it make me sad? Did I go in getting what I expected? And what can I do to get it closer to that place of feeling good? And
Absolutely.
and I think it's just that's at the core of the work I do, the power of the pause. And it's what we do in that pause that can quite literally determine the rest of our lives. And when we don't stop and get curious and look around us, we miss all of the color, all of the dynamic aspects of life, right? So is you said it's not innate. This is something you have to learn and practice and do. Have you always had the ability to check in with both sides of that beautiful brain of yours? Or is it something you've learned?
I would say no. I want to say yes.
Yeah.
But I will tell you a perfect example is that as a musician, I love it. I mean, every time I am playing music or singing or, writing a song, I am filled with so much joy and passion. And I ask myself, why don't I do this more? Why is this always seemingly the one thing I want to do, yet it's the one thing I don't,
Mhm.
prioritize per se? And, you know, it's, I learned through, you know, got out of college, joined into the career. You get into the hustle and bustle of life. You're like, wow, I'm an adult now, learning a job and making new friends and
And checking
relocating
the
to a new place.
boxes and following all the rules.
And you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that at some point. I'm gonna do that at some point. And I would have dreams. I was, oh, I want to record my album.
Yeah.
I want to do this and that. But it was always want. It was always one day. It was always the goal on the list every single year.
Yep.
And I created barriers and excuses around that thing, which is so funny because it brings me so much joy. So why would I create barriers? And it took,
What were some of
you
the
know,
barriers, do you think, if you don't mind me asking?
oh, of course, of course. I am someone who's I'm a perfectionist. Well, actually, I'll call myself a recovering perfectionist. I used to be a
Congratulations,
perfectionist.
darling. I
And
love that I meet so many women who are actively working on becoming recovering perfectionists because
yes,
I'm like, be as imperfect and perfect as you are. That's it. So I love that. I
exactly.
celebrate that.
Exactly. So I grew up that way and it feeds into everything I do. Not now, I'm all about like let's just do it. You can always adjust later or fix things and progress is progress one step at a time. You got to, get there.
Mhm.
And I said, "Oh, I love doing gigs. I love playing music with people." And they go, "Oh, do you have a CD?"
Mhm.
I mean, that's funny because now there's no CDs, but um,
I was
I
going
would
to say
say
that kind of puts us in time and place.
it does. It really does. And I would feel sad. I would feel like a failure. That perfectionism in me comes through and say, "Oh my gosh, I need to stop playing gigs. I need to focus on recording my album." That was 10 plus years ago.
Mhm.
And it was okay, well, let me, buy some CDs and I'll start, researching how to do this. And oh, studio, I'm terrified. That's so expensive. There's
Right.
these things that you get put in your head by whether it's movies, the internet, social media, whatever it is,
Or
makes
just fear. Fear is going
fear.
to keep us safe, right? Oh,
Fear keeps us safe.
we can't
Like
spend that
I'm gonna
money. We can't do that.
exactly. And I also
Where we
kind of felt
think
like, who
fear
am
keeps
I?
us safe. Let me just say that. But yeah, so you've got all these beliefs. You've got this
Yeah.
mindset of, I know I have the talent, the potential, and the passion, but yet I'm afraid it's not going to be perfect. I don't have what they're asking for, yada, 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 yada. What's the
Yeah. And
shift?
the
How do you
shift.
go beyond that?
Okay. So I love this example because it's probably one of the most powerful lessons and shifts that I had for my life. And it's so simple. It's not like some huge revolutionary thing, but sometimes the simplest things kickstart the brightest fire for you in life. And it was about realizing um, that I was creating barriers that didn't exist. And it was based on the fact that I had been carrying a fixed mindset. I talk about that in my book, that you have to build mental tools first. If you want to get somewhere in life, it's
Mhm.
not about writing it down. It's not about the plan. It's not about executing. You must develop mental tools first to be open and accepting to where you want to go.
Absolutely.
And it was about learning. I got to a point where I said, wow, I have to let go of some of this fear. I have to call up or walk into a recording studio because I've never done it. So, how could I honestly say that I can't do it or there's barriers if I've never tried? And I believe me, I was like, well, I'll just do it myself. So, I bought equipment, I did it myself. It was never perfect. Why? Studio engineer. So, why am I trying to, do something that people go to school and are amazing for doing?
Right.
And that was my big turning point, was making the decision to embrace fear, to take a positive growth mindset that
Mhm.
all opportunities are worth having, even if it's failure or success that come out of that opportunity.
Yep.
The value is learning. And when I went in there and, met people and was willing to say out loud, sometimes you have to admit the things that make you worry in life. And
Oh,
if you say them out loud, you're set free.
it is the strangest thing because we hold so close the thing that has the greatest potential to change our entire life. If we can't acknowledge, I'm not doing this because I'm afraid, you're going to think for the rest of your life you're not good enough. I'm never going to be that person. And what is it? I say this all the time on the podcast. Seneca says we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And when we can ask people, what are you tolerating? What's keeping you up at night? And and now it's shared between you and me. And now the burden is half. And now it's not so big and scary. And now we can walk into the studio and say, I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
And that's
And
it. That's the magic of
exactly,
life.
that's
You
it.
just have to be willing to
That's the magic.
try. And I highly recommend having people in your corner to help when it doesn't go great, right? Like
Of course.
when it is, because it is scary to put yourself out there. But you need those people in the studio going, girl, you got this. We can do this, right? We'll figure it out. So, is that the turning point then, perhaps, that inspired your book?
Actually, it was the same. It was a bit, it was about the same amount of time that went
Mhm.
by, and I came to a lot of those turning points
Mhm.
around that time. Yes.
Okay.
Um, I was able to go into the studio and admit I am not, some professional musician. I just want to make my music,
Hmm.
and letting go of that fear and having people be like, yeah, like, let's do it. Let's make something happen. And all of a sudden I could unlock that. I was working in aerospace and I decided to leave my position. And it was a very challenging decision. There was a lot of, you know, I'll be very blunt, there was a lot of toxicity in the company.
Hmm.
And I had to make that choice to leave, or,
Or
and
get
find
sucked
something
in.
better, or continue to be sucked into
Right.
something that I knew was damaging my mental health in a way I didn't even understand at the time.
Well, and I was just, that's magic. Like, how do you know that, right? Because it's so hard for, like, I can't see my nose. I can't see what's right in front of me. And everyone else can see it. How did you figure out that it was toxic? Because when you're in it and everyone else is aligning and no one, and it's all just moving in the same direction, it's hard to kind of stick up and go, something's not right here, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's very easy, because you can get in a situation. We're focusing on the corporate work world for a second. You know, 1 month goes by, 3 months go by, 3 years go by, and you realize 3 years ago or previous, you were ready to quit your job or you wanted to do something else. Yet 3 years go by. So how do you make that decision? How do you realize that you need to make a change? And the answer that I have for that is data. And I didn't know it at the time. I will answer like how I actually in this moment came up with my answer. But now that I've had a lot of time to reflect, it's looking at data. And data doesn't have to be, ones and zeros and spreadsheets and things that you think of, in the tech computer world. Data means looking at facts on paper and deciding what to do based on facts on paper. Of course, your heart and your mind are always naturally going to insert the emotional threads into every decision you make. But I think all too often in this world, we forget to look at data. So it's easy to be in a toxic situation in a workplace and continue because you love your coworkers or you enjoy the job, but this manager or this person is just makes it so frustrating. But I love my work, but this is so bad. And I can almost guarantee that if you figured out how to leave and go to another company or your own company, you would find your niche and more people and a job you love. And you might have cut out that toxicity that you might have seen in that manager because the world is full of so many opportunities. And so how do you get that? You get that by saying, I do it every 3 months as part of the summit method, which is this planning technique I go over in my book. It's like this 3-month cadence of planning. You should be seeing that, maybe it's in a journal or maybe it's, on your phone, whatever is easy for you. When did you have these points of despair in your corporate life or in your job? Just call it job because
or in any
doesn't have to be corporate job.
Right? Like it
or
could
relationship.
be a relationship with a career or a relationship with a person. But if we're not checking in of, is this working for me? What did I work with a lot of people who come to me. They're like, I need a life coach because I want to leave my job. I want to leave my marriage. I want to leave. I want to leave. I want to leave. And I always say to them at the right time, you can run from yourself, but you won't get far. If you just quit this job, sight unseen, and don't know why, don't have the data to support what you like and what you really don't like, you're just going to you're going to find the same job with the same conflict until you deal with the conflict. So I always say to them, great, I will support any decision you make, but we're not going to make the decision today. And we're probably not going to make the decision for about a month as long as they're safe, right? If it's a safety issue, it's a different story. Just want to precursor that. But it's slow down. Okay, so the manager is a jackass. We'll go ahead and just label that person. And that is true. But do you love the job? Is that person staying? Like, what is it really that is making you unhappy? And a lot of times it's just to the point of your book, they don't have a purpose. They don't know why they're clocking in every day. They don't know why they're getting so angry. They don't know why they're tolerating ABC. But when we look at it, a lot of people don't actually leave their jobs, leave their marriages. Sometimes they do. But it's finding the thing that makes them happy to be alive. And then the conditions become slightly irrelevant. I can do hard things if I know that there's a reason why. If I'm going to do the hard things today to get by myself some quote free time tomorrow, I can do that because I know why. I've worked jobs I don't love because I knew why and they were okay, right? I knew I needed XYZ to make my life work.
You had the balance, right? When people get into a point, I think, where the job is everything and they really focus in on that and they don't give their mental health space to do other things. It's really easy to get hung up on things that happen at work and get really frustrated and feel like you hate the job because you're not giving yourself your life purpose or your outside balance. And everyone talks about work-life balance, which I think is
BS.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
Well, we could talk about that because it's total BS. It's like nice, good #life goals, but go ahead and then I'll tell you my theory on it.
All good. But people they need to find that purpose, those mental tools, so that when they get into situations, let's say at work or in a job or relationship, they can take the data and then make decisions and make those micro steps to get to where they want to go. Like you said, don't quit tomorrow. Like, you got to give yourself time and to see what this job or relationship or whatever it might be in your life, or goal, whatever you're trying to do, what does it look like?
Yeah, and people sometimes will say, well, I can't tolerate this for another month. I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm like, well, then honey, you can do it for another month. I promise you. Right? Again, safety aside. I want to just touch back on the work-life balance idea. And, I have the word balanced here tattooed on my wrist. It was part of my black belt training. It was the mantra of our dojo. And I learned about balance, that you can have work-life balance, but if you look at a scale that is static and not moving is not doing anything. It's not living its purpose. Its job is to weigh things out, right? So we have to be willing to put things in, and sometimes work is going to tip the scale a little bit differently because the conditions, the values, the urgency of the situation, sometimes family, right? I have to take my kid to the doctor. Sorry, work. And the balance to me, just like in martial arts, is not being thrown off or being hit a little bit. It's coming back to center and knowing that you have the skills and the courage it takes to come back again and to come back again. Because we're going to be thrown out. We're going to be thrown out of our balance. And when I think about the comment on how we work and how we value our job, career, profession, whatever it may be, we are a product of the Industrial Revolution, right? Yeah. All of a sudden now people are leaving the farms, the fields, the tanneries, and coming in and clocking in. And now their whole purpose, because now they've got to pay for their property and their things, is about the career, right? And the career becomes the life. And now we're living in a world where we're separating a little bit from that, because we realize that it's, I mean, not to be dramatic, but in some cases, very likely killing ourselves, right? Slowly, often. But we have to change that. And so much of that is about finding the purpose, right? Like, is my purpose my job? On some days, yes, in some ways. Is my purpose my life as a mother, wife, community member? So when you sat down to write your book, and what was the driving question you were trying to answer, right? Because we're looking at this work-life balance, we're looking at finding, joy and purpose through life, working in very serious jobs and having very, passionate side gigs or whatever. What was the question that you looked to solve?
I was looking, well, first of all, way back, Aliki, getting out of college and joining career for the first time. I was introduced to having so much more. Oh, I'm getting paid, for what felt like the first time. I'd had, some jobs growing up, but that's not the same.
Yeah.
Getting my first kind of career job. And you realize, oh, I also have so much freedom. I can spend all my time working, or I can be with people. I can explore family, friends, communities, hobbies, personal growth, fitness, spirituality. Oh, some of these things take money. I need to figure out my finances, because nobody teaches you finances unless you come from, a family that might teach that. And I realized so quickly that I was spiraling. And I think all of us spiral. I'm giving an example of, when I was in my early 20s, but I don't think it matters what your age is. And I want to say that because I think it happens to everyone at different times for different reasons. And the question that I was really solving was, how do I break the spiral? How do I break the spiral that life provides, the distractions and everything that flows to us? With now we have lots of social media and internet to distract us, but I needed a method. And I naturally, probably because of this, left brain person over here, I started to map that out. I said, there are 4 pillars. There's 4 areas of success. Now, at the time, I didn't I didn't structure it all, right? And
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point of
You're being
why the book
creative
came.
in
Yeah.
your mapping.
It was okay. How do I make plans or thoughts, right? I know some people are like, 5-year plan or
Mhm.
making plans is too rigid. It's just organizing your thoughts
Right.
in a way that you can use them for good.
Effectively.
So
Yep.
with that, it was personal growth. Okay, how do I look at personal growth, financials, career, and
Mm.
community? Because personal growth is you. You are you, your mind is you, and no one else has your mind. They can't read your mind. You have to fuel yourself. And I'm not saying that in any kind of selfish way, but if you
Mhm.
aren't strong enough, then you can't give to those around you as
Yep.
effectively, right?
Yep. Yeah, and we especially as women are not so great at that. And I'd like to just comment that I'm starting to love the word selfish because
Okay,
I
yeah.
live in a world where when I fill myself, when I nurture the self, girl, look out because I have so much more to give, right? So if we take away the connotation that selfish is a dirty, nasty word, and listen, those mean girl type personas that look and act very selfish, that's its own thing. That's just its own world. But what I'm talking about is the filling of the self. And that might
Self-awareness,
look like
self-care,
selfish. Yeah.
self. Yeah.
How are you being in this moment? That is being selfish, taking that moment just to reflect upon yourself, not what your people need, not what all the needs are, because then I can move forward knowing where to put the rest of my energy, right? Like I know
Absolutely.
when I've got myself taken care of, when I've come back to center, okay, I can handle this, then I can give out, then I can let the overflow, you know, sprinkle around to everybody else.
Exactly. And I love how you mentioned, you know, earlier you talked a little bit about kind of this silence or this peace or this thinking, and you just alluded to it just now.
Mhm.
And I think that's like the key, crux of personal growth is giving yourself the time to think about you and what you need so that you can go forth into the other three items that I was working on, right?
Yeah.
I hate to, the world does revolve around money
Mhm.
still. So
It's a
you do need to look at
reality.
your finances,
It's a
right?
reality. And if we're careless with it, it changes our reality.
It does. It
Sure.
does. And in order to fuel finances positively or negatively, you have to make decisions and figure out how you want to, track that or make plans in that world.
Mhm.
But then your career, which could be corporate 9 to 5, it could be gig economy. Maybe it's your own business. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. Maybe you have multiple jobs.
Yeah.
Your career is what you do with your time in exchange for money, which feeds your finances.
Mhm.
But in this circle, community is this last piece, not last because it's last in priority, but because now that you've built yourself,
Mhm.
you need to actually focus on community. And community is so important to me because I think it is the one thing that people don't realize that you actually have to work on. I think we take for granted our family or our
Mhm.
friends or our connections or people that, are there. And you need to actually make goals around, you know, elevating those relationships or opposite. Maybe
Yep.
there's toxic people in your life that you have to work on boundary creation or removing for different reasons. And so those were the four things that I wanted to make a plan around.
Mhm.
And at early years, Alaki over here, started writing that out. And I
Wow.
created lots of templates and ways to do that. I actually did all of this, with my now husband, and we created these plans. So 10 plus years ago, I started
Wow.
using this method. And I've been
Wow.
using it ever since with these, 5-year plan, 2-year action plan, quarterly goals, how you look at it every 3 months, the summit event. And
Mhm.
it's meant to be holistic. It's meant to be down to earth. It's meant to be take me out of the business world with objectives and the
Right.
the boring stuff and just look at life. Look at
Yeah.
the data
Yep.
and see where I want to go. Not because I need to be rigid, but when the spiral hits, do I have something, a map
Mhm.
that I can pick up and go on the trail of life and reach the top of a different mountain and start plotting out different mountains I want to go to and adjust as needed, adjust
Mhm.
that plan, but adjust it every 3 months. Don't wait a year. Don't wait for New Year's resolutions to
That's it.
make a change. And
New
so
Year's
I already did
resolutions.
that, right?
Hmm.
I built all that up and it was just for us. And to answer the question, all of this is to answer the question of the book. I did quit my job and I did find myself in this, what am I doing with my life? Right. And I had always wanted to become an author. So I'm named after an author who's a children's book author. And I thought one day
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
me. I'm like, I, I have so many goals and things I want to do in life. It's impossible to probably do them all, but I love it. I just want to do it all. Right.
Just keep trying. We'll
And
have to
so,
come back because I want you to share the story of your name in the book.
oh, of course, of course. But I said, you know what? I'm going to learn how to publish a book. Right. And I learned self-publishing
Hmm.
and it really just clicked for me that, hey, because originally I actually wanted to do fiction and children's
Hmm.
books because that my name, comes from
Hmm.
that world. But I realized I had this thing that I wanted to share. I went through my finding my life purpose, finding who I was during that period of, you know, break after you
Hmm.
get out of that the hustle of what the
Yeah.
job that I quit was doing to me. And I actually opened my mind and looked around and said, wow, there's so much more to life that I was clouded by.
Yeah. Now, did you
I'm
do
going to
that
write the book.
alone? Did you do that? Like, did you come to that awareness with a mentor, a coach, or is this just self-reflection?
That's a great question. So I did not come to this awareness with a specific coach, but I think some of us need to remember that coaching doesn't necessarily mean that you had a human being with you.
For sure.
It was reading. I started picking up, some self-help books at
Hmm.
the time that really kind of spoke to me, and the power of words, whether it's coming from a coach that's actually talking to you or reading or listening to an audiobook. I
Yep.
cannot begin to express how much that can help people,
Yeah.
like anyone.
Yep.
Go learn something
Yep.
from those who have walked in those steps before you and are trying to share their value points in helping you get
Correct.
to where you want to go. And
You
I
are
wanted
not
to
the only
return the favor.
person. Yes. Thank you for putting another book out for us all. But you're so right. And I appreciate that because for me, I mean, obviously I want everyone to have a coach because just to have that space to go, I don't like my job. I don't want to do it. Why, and have someone be like, okay, cool. Tell me about it. How do you know? Is that true? Like, what would be different? And just because our brains are we use such a small percentage of the function capabilities in our brains because we're just going on that hamster wheel, right? But if we just like you said, stop and kind of go, but wait, what else is happening? What else could it be? And utilizing not even the fullness, but more of our brain. A lot of times in our world, we have to train that like we would train any other muscle. And that means engaging in things that challenge your perceptions, your certainty, everything, challenge your language. So I love that. What books, if you can share, were there any books that were like, wow?
uh, there's so many.
Hmm.
But the two that I'm just going to list out the first two.
Hmm.
And most people have heard of them. I
Okay.
feel if you're into self-help, at least. I did read The Miracle Morning, and I think The Miracle Morning, which is by Hal Elrod, it's a fantastic book to kind of kickstart you into leveraging a routine and leveraging order to try and open yourself up for growth.
I love
And
it.
that, like earlier you had mentioned before we started recording, that you like to give yourself space in the morning, right?
Hmm.
And I do think there's a power there when you wake up and you go through, a couple of activities
Hmm.
of peace, of centering,
Yep.
that allow you to see clarity and make the choices you want to, make each day. So the
Yep.
Miracle Morning really kickstarted my drive.
Do you have a morning
Followed,
routine or a morning
I do. I mean, it's
program?
not as the Miracle Morning is very rigid and there's a lot to it. And
Mhm.
okay, there's only 6 steps. It feels like a lot, but my routine now is very simple, right? It's
Mhm.
waking up and making tea. Like I love just the art of making tea, and
Mhm.
I, pick out which tea I want. I sit down, I drink my cup of tea and I just really think about the day, about the past, whatever comes to mind, but centering myself and having that awareness of being in
Mhm.
the now. There's too much like phone, this,
Yes.
notifications, blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, right? All over.
The
And I think
noise.
just being present and
Mhm.
practicing presence is my as simple as it is, that's my routine. And
But
then
that's like a
I'll welcome the day.
superpower, right? Like that becomes a superpower because again, now as the day and the noise and all the things come at you, you know how to find that peace, right? Like even if it's, and I tell people, go find a bathroom and like hide in the stall and just breathe for 90 seconds, right? Like we have this free power of taking the pause, taking the breath, and then using these big, beautiful brains. And it's like, we just don't even do it. We just don't even do it. So the practice of the morning, and a lot of people are like, oh, Michaela, I can't meditate. I can't do this. I'm like, I don't need you to meditate. I just need you to shut up for 10 minutes. Like just shh, just shush, right? And that builds the skill, that builds those muscles to be able to then come back to that place and to return to a place that feels safe, right?
You build
So,
mindset muscles. Exactly.
yeah, right. I mean, we spend so much time. I hope people spend time working on their bodies and dealing with these beautiful structures that are here to carry us through life to some degree to where we're all living happy, healthy lives into old age. But we forget that our brain is also a muscle. And if we don't create this space where this is true and maybe that's true, and I probably sound like a crazy person when I battle through these things, but I'm like, I want that, I don't want that. I want that, I don't want that. Because until I start creating the pendulum swing, right? I'm going to be stuck out here in certainty land thinking I like something, spending my time, my money, my energy, my emotions on that thing. And we have to flex the muscle. We have to build more muscles to adapt because life is going very fast and I don't see it slowing down. So to have that time in the morning and let's talk, it regulates your nervous system. It says this is where we're going to be today. Like this is our level of comfort. We can go higher, but this is our zone. Um, so I highly recommend we all look to something that serves us in the morning. It does not have to look like mine or yours, but taking that time before we jump into the river and start swimming, just to be, to be in our beingness. Um, and I think that really can help us flourish in our creativity. So, okay, so that was one book. What's another book?
The other one was Badass Habits.
Oh,
And yeah, and not for the reason that you might be thinking with the title being
yeah, yeah,
habits. I actually um I didn't have like a habit I was trying to kick or bring in when I
yeah.
saw this book on the shelf. I was really just trying to challenge myself to read more books, honestly, and I said, "Well, all
That
right,
one looks
this one's
fun.
it. Let's do it. I'll learn something."
Yeah.
And in this book, she actually goes over a lot about boundaries. And I mean, there's plenty of other topics in the book, but it it was learning to really hone in on boundary creation in your life.
Mhm.
And that was the kickstart for me, right? I had just left this job. My mental health was in pieces. I was trying to,
Mhm.
find people and community and read books and
Right.
write a book and do music and follow my passions for the first time. Let's just do it. I have a couple months off. And that was a spiral, right?
Right.
And when I learned about boundaries, it was really magical to start practicing that. I think, and I'll be perfectly honest, I still struggle with boundaries. I think a lot of
Mhm.
us struggle with boundaries, whether it's people or communications or
Yeah.
commitments, whatever it might be. So those were the first two, and they definitely changed my life
Mhm.
into me saying, my purpose, I believe that I was given was I just want to help people. I want to help them get to a state where they can be better, even if it's only one step better, or maybe it's to exponential success. That would be great.
Mhm.
But I just want to figure out a way that I can share a message that I hope can help them
Mhm.
get to their next one thing or their next steps to a greater,
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
so
have
I
you
wrote this
had
book.
feedback on the book? Are you seeing people embrace that one step or maybe monumental step?
Yeah,
What's
it's a great
feedback?
question. I do get plenty of feedback, at least so it's three phases. There's mental tools, planning techniques, and execution habits.
Mhm.
And a lot of people really hone in on the mental tools part of it when I'm talking with them, because I think for all kinds of reasons, for what in our society, we just haven't really been trained to use proper mental tools to learn to reset, to know what to do when you get into a tough situation. Let's say you're looking at your finances, your planning techniques section, and you're having
Mhm.
to write down, you realize you have more debt than you thought, or
Mhm.
you are looking at a retirement plan, you're not seeing how the pieces work out, or you're just terrified of data and you can't
Yeah.
even figure out how to look at it at all.
Yeah.
That's how we get into this like mental churn and into a bad place. The joy is
Mhm.
removed, everything is,
Mhm.
dark.
Yep.
So, I just wanted to be able to help people realize that you need to set up your mental tools first. You need to
Mhm.
find that life purpose statement. You need to figure out how to use a mindset change muscle
Mhm.
to get to a positive growth mindset, that all opportunities are worth having, because failure is not failure, it's learning.
Yep.
And and a way to reset, which is funny because we were just talking about mourning and just having
Yeah.
peace. I use a mind, body, spirit exercise to
Hmm.
say, what am I thinking right now? How's my body feel right now? What's my
Mhm.
spirit saying? As a way to just stop everything and answer
Mhm.
those three questions and just see what comes out of it,
So,
right? What clarity might be brought from that moment of getting away from whatever is bothering you and
mhm.
resetting. So most of the feedback comes from that you have to
Yep.
really set up these mental tools. Then you can write out the data and see what your goals are, in
Yep.
the four areas of success, personal
Right.
growth, financial, career, and community. But
But
start with mental.
it, if you're not actually listening to the divine voice within, right? I don't care what spirituality or religion you want to apply it to, but there is something, the spirit, something inside of us that is ours uniquely. And I believe our purpose here on life and on earth is to identify that and then share it. But if I'm only making my decisions on what you want me to be and what he or she want me to be, what culture, whatever says I should be, I'm suppressing my purpose. I'm suppressing who I am in service to something else. And it to me is like the biggest shame because now we hit 70, 80 years old and people are like, screw it, I'm going to be me. Right. But they're 70, 80 years old and they've not squandered, maybe possibly not lived the fullest life. Right. And I don't want people to do that. So anytime, for what attracted me to you is this book. And first off, the cover is gorgeous. So I want to hear about that. So we have to talk about the cover and we have to talk about your name. Go
The
ahead and
cover.
show it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And
Thank you.
I was like, all right, I like Conquer Your Summit. I like that there are other mountains because we're going to get to this summit and then we're going to have to do it again and again, right? Because I hope I have a lot of goals and dreams. But the thing that really pulled me in about you is the first off, the aerospace and artist. Okay. Those are very different minded things. But then when we look closer at you, you are all kinds of exploratory. Okay. So nature, art, music, where do you see these themes of finding purpose, or in the lyrics you write, are they targeted towards finding purpose? I guess what I'm looking at is, were there little drops of information, little data points through time in those parts of you that you like to explore and be creative in that you believe got you here? Does that make sense? I'm trying to
Yeah,
tie
and
together.
you can course correct me if I
No,
if
no,
I go
no.
off course here
This is your
from what
story.
you've
I
just
just
said.
I just like to kind of put people in a direction and let you take it. It's called
Sure.
End All the Things. So who cares where we
So for all the things, I'm going to answer multiple things
Awesome.
that have been brought up that we need to close on. So my
Thank
name,
you.
Aliki. Um, yes, I'm named after a children's book author. My parents saw the name. And I could go into that Alaki is a Hawaiian name and it means of the sea.
Hmm.
But I have more recently I move away from that because for me, the meaning of my name is that it is unique. And I've lived with that my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a badge that I wanted to be unique. Not actively, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like, my name's Aliki, so I got to be unique. I think it fueled me.
It gave you permission
It
almost
gave me
because
permission and purpose to want to fill my life and fill the name. I was
Mhm.
given this name that everybody,
Oh,
mispronounces,
I
and
love that.
and it's pronounced in a way that's not spelled, but that's okay. That means I was meant to be imperfect in order to create something awesome.
Oh, pause on that. Can we chill bump for a second? That was good. I was meant to be imperfect, right? Because now, don't let me put words in your mouth, but now you get to tell people who you are and
Right,
show them. It's not the face value of Aliki, right? Because that's what I was
right,
like, who am I talking to? Um, but now, no, I'm Alaki.
right.
I am the beingness in your, oh my gosh, chill bumps. I was born to
Thank you.
be imperfect. Oh my God. What a gift to come aware of that. I don't know. I guess
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm applying this to myself because with a name like Michaela spelled Michaela or Michela or Michaela or all the things. I actually just interviewed a woman, beautiful pronunciation. She says it Michaela, like a South American pronunciation. But I love the idea because I did not like my name. I struggled with it. It was hard. People didn't get it. And I was great at being perfect. And I just wanted to be seen as quick, easy, and perfect. I don't know. That sounds kind of cheap, but you know what I mean.
Uh,
And I,
that doesn't sound cheap. That's life. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes you have that's what you believe or
that was my
believed at the
experience.
time, and that was your
Yeah.
experience. 100%. Yeah.
I was born not to correct people's names, but to introduce myself, my being, who I uniquely am. I love that. I
Yeah.
think you
It's
just like broke
honest.
something open in me.
I love it. There you go. Now you can, take that and alter it in whatever way you need and bring that for you.
Yeah, well, this
Because,
is why I do the
yeah,
podcast. Like this is why, because people are filled with so many gems. And I'm an opportunist. I want to collect people's gems and be like, ooh, look at this beautiful place I get to play in. And
exactly.
and that is what I hope I always have a breakthrough on every conversation because I want you to bring information so that anyone listening, myself included, can go, oh my God, what if I could do that? What if that's
Exactly.
me? What am I labeling as a conflict and a pain in the ass as a kid that really helps me identify my being, my own version of perfect?
Exactly. And
So
you
good.
are unique in that people will remember your name. They'll
Yeah.
remember you. Now, whether or not they remember your name correctly is not the point,
Not the
actually.
point.
It's that when I introduce myself, it's always oh, wow, what an interesting name, or what a beautiful name, or what a, and
The
blank.
conversation starter.
It's a conversation starter, and it brings this fuel to me of how do I keep filling that name. And
Mhm.
so I like to fuel my name with all the things I love, right? With
Mhm.
with color. Oh, I'm, art by Aliki. I am
Mhm.
Aliki Samone, the
Mhm.
musician. I'm Aliki the author, right? My name is so important to me. It's why, to bring to another point you asked on,
Mhm.
which is the cover of my book.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I could probably pull up a different version of some other book, but it doesn't have the typical self-help cover vibe per se,
Right.
right? It's colorful, it's got mountains, it's in
Mhm.
that
It's beautiful.
geometric, form, but I love it. I wanted to create imagery of other things I love, nature, something that's awe-inspiring. You cannot, look up at the mountains of Yosemite and not feel a little small, but
Something.
in a powerful way. And I want you to feel like that when you're looking at your dreams and your goals. I want you to look at them like, wow, this big dream I have is looks so epic and hard, but the
Mhm.
journey to get there is going to be magical. That hike to get to the peak, that feeling when you reach a goal
Mm.
is
You're hitting
magical.
something. You're
you
hitting
know?
something. You said Yosemite, and a couple years ago we had the opportunity of visiting Zion National Park.
Oh, yes, yes.
Changed so much of me. But I've always believed that I'm afraid of heights, right? I'll do the things, but it's with great trepidation. I don't want to get too close, but I do them. But at the same time, here's this like Angel's Landing, this huge, huge hike. And I'm like, I don't know, but everyone else is doing it. I'm like, I guess we'll see what we're made of. And girl, I will probably link in the show notes so people can see what I'm talking about. But it was like it was a grueling hike to get to the safe place. And then you have to hike with the chains where you're like on this tiny little narrow edge. And I did it. Now I stood up at the top for like 10, not even 10, probably like 2 seconds. And I'm like, okay, I have to sit down. But it felt excruciating. It was terrifying. It was, I was with a community, like we were supportive of one another. They got me up for sure, but I had to do it. But I didn't do it alone. I didn't do it with all the confidence, but I did it. And the standing up on that moment, and maybe that's why I was attracted to this book, but the standing up in that moment was unbelievable. A feeling I've never felt before. And that is reality. Now, here's the tricky part. Then I had to climb back down, right? Then I had to get back down. But the reality is, I did it. And I think when we look at our goals, whether it's a health goal, a work goal, a relationship goal, we don't even believe it's possible. Some of that's self-worth, some of that's the confidence. But when we find people, find information, find resources and tools, it makes it easier to get there. When we recognize it's not going to always feel good, it's going to be unpleasant, but getting there, getting to the other side is out of this world. And I feel like the way you've structured the book, and I have to read it, I apologize, I have not yet read it, but
That's okay.
But the way you've structured the book covers all the parts of who we are from a heart-centered place first of who are you, what do you want, what are you willing to do to get there? And I just really appreciate that. So, and I think the cover speaks to that. I like how it's got kind of the twisty, windy turn going up. Did you design the cover?
I I was not the actual in the computer designer,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I basically architected that I
Mhm.
wanted this beautiful mountain landscape and I wanted kind of this very contrasted colors. And I probably drove the designer crazy. There's a lot of like retro designs
Mhm.
that do that.
Mhm.
There's like those retro travel posters, if you
Yes.
recall anything. I wanted that vibe, right? I wanted to
Mhm.
feel like I was traveling somewhere to get to where I wanted to go on this epic journey. But there's something you just said that I really want to hone in on really quick because I think it will help people, through difficulties, which you expressed doing this amazing hike,
Mhm.
to Angel's Landing and how hard that was
Mhm.
and how amazing it felt at the end.
Mhm.
And I want to paint a picture to yourself and others. How many times have you gone into a building, let's say a skyscraper? I know not everyone has probably been in a giant skyscraper, but it could be a 10-story building, whatever it
Sure.
might be. And you get in the elevator and you go to the top. And maybe you've had the opportunity to actually go to the top of one of these buildings and see
Mhm.
outside or go on the roof or whatever it is. Cool view, awesome
Mhm.
experience. Do you remember it? Do you really think about it? How often are you, man, that trip to
Yeah.
the top of the 100 floors of some
Yeah,
building?
yeah.
Oh, no, you took the easy route of getting in an elevator to get to the top.
Mhm.
And you might remember the view, but it's not enough
Yeah.
to fuel something that drives you. It's not enough for you to have learned something magical that's going to change your life. But your experience of hiking that epic trail, which
It was
I have done, so I
You
totally
did.
understand.
Oh,
Um,
sister,
it
I see
is the
you.
switchbacks
Those
until you
switchbacks
get to this.
were like unbelievable. And they just kept going and going. But then you get up there and there's right, a little like stream below and a ravine.
Yes.
Oh.
That's beautiful. But look at you in this moment, however
I'm
long ago that
glowing.
was, you can see it. You can see the switchbacks. You can see the waterfalls. You can see the people and the rocks and the view and the trees and the feeling it gave you and the fear it's
Mm-hmm.
like it happened yesterday, and you learn from that and you want to do it again because you love the feeling of getting to the next goal or the next mountain. But do you remember what the elevator looked like? It
Nope.
looked like an elevator. So
Yep.
that's what I want to extend to people, that sometimes you have a big dream or a big goal, you're going to have hardship to get there. You're going to have to learn. You're going to need people to be hiking there with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I built my book on this imagery of climbing a mountain, not because I think everyone needs to climb an actual mountain, and I recognize the outdoors are not for everyone,
Right, right.
but it's about creating some fun imagery that will change you.
Mm-hmm.
Learn from your experiences,
Mm-hmm.
chart out a course. That means take your map, follow the trail,
Yeah.
and understand where you want to go in life.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. So I'm going to kind of do a shift here. You said, learn from your experiences. And before we end today, we have to talk about aerospace. Like, we
Yes,
have to talk about this. Okay. So you designed aerospace spacecraft. Am I right?
correct. Yes.
All right. So, number one, so cool. What kind of projects did you work on? Like the actual, like a satellite,
Sure.
or what were you making?
Yeah. So I spent 10 plus years in aerospace. And my first go around, my first job, I was in geocommunication satellites. So those are the satellites that are, I'm going to get sciencey for a moment. It's my
Nerd
favorite
out,
thing.
girl. Bring it on.
Um, I like to get sciencey, and I do like STEM outreach and try to inspire the youth, and it's
I
fun.
love
So
it.
you have the Earth, and geocom satellites are out here, and oh, there we go, out here. And as the Earth turns, those satellites are basically staying directly above where you are. So,
Okay.
the less glamorous things are like direct TV, Dish Network. If you have any of those kind of antenna systems on your house and
Mhm.
you're getting a signal, you're getting a signal from a
From one of
spacecraft that
those.
either I helped design or many, many other people or other
Yeah,
companies helped design, that type of thing. They are
that's so
huge.
cool.
They're like the size of a small bus. That's how big
Okay.
they are. And they take years and years and years
What
of
are some
design and
considerations?
manufacturing.
Yeah,
So,
so you sit down with a plain piece of paper and go, I'm going to draw a satellite. What are
sure.
the considerations? Now, I understand the pressure is different, temperature, all
Yeah.
that stuff. What do you,
So I was a mechanical design engineer, so I did a lot of CAD. So I was in there creating all the visualizations and routing um, harness. So all the electrical cables, where is the units going to go? How are the antennas going to deploy, and designing then how it gets made. So making
Mhm.
drawings that the manufacturing team was going to go through and be able to build.
Mhm.
But so that was like my slice of the great
Mhm.
pie,
The
because there's
great pie.
thousands of people who are involved to
Yeah,
make
yeah,
a satellite go from a piece of paper to
yeah.
a product giving you something. And I started in big space there, but I actually went to a small startup and smaller satellites later. But
Mhm.
the it's okay, space is amazing because it is, I mean, it's full of so much unknown, and it is nothing like what we have here on Earth. And so when you are designing, uh, forget the type of spacecraft I'm designing, anything that goes into space, you have to think about the environment.
Mhm.
And on Earth, we have air. Ah, lovely air that we get to breathe, and space there is none. So you're now designing for a vacuum environment. You are choosing materials and um, structural components that are going to survive all of these different elements. And those elements are going through launch. So you got to get inside of a launch vehicle, and that rocket is going to go from, the ground into space. And that it's a very violent experience. It
Mhm.
has a lot of vibration. It's very loud. And so if you've,
Mhm.
gone to a concert and your ears hurt, that's the acoustics coming in and harming you.
Right.
So a rocket has acoustics or sound that then has the ability, because it's so high, to actually harm
What's
the
inside?
equipment. And so you
Mhm.
have to design for that. So then you get into space. It's funny because you had to design for this horrible environment where the G forces, or, it's got to be really strong and rigid to survive to get to space. Yet when it's in space, it doesn't need any of that, because now there's no gravity. Now there's, you know, just it can float. It doesn't need all that structure. So that's just really interesting. And then you have to survive around radiation. And so, like, we get a sunburn. Sunburns in space are extremely aggressive. They can, burn through materials, degrade solar panels, and you need those solar panels to survive and get power. And then there's, you know, micrometeorites or tiny little space debris that's flying around at 7 kilometers per second.
Wow.
It can hit you and go right through, metal or
Wow.
structures. So you have to then design your spacecraft to have shielding. You want to make sure your happy little components in there are safe. So it's just really interesting. And they talk a lot about, we talk a lot about systems engineering and how you have to actually think about how all the components work together, how all the structure works together, and how then that needs to survive in space for 1, 2, 5, 20 years without ever getting service. So imagine buying a car and there are no gas stations, there are no mechanic shops. I mean, you wouldn't survive because you need gas at some point. In space, you have to design for the entirety of your mission to be self-sufficient. And there's a lot of reliability needed in that. So I love talking about this. I know we got really sciencey, but all of that feeds into to me as a person as well, right? I know how to do that technical stuff. And I think you can apply that mentality into what you do in your personal life, right? And understand how important it is to interweave your different facets of passions and articulate where everything needs to go. So
and the thing I love is that it's so parallel to the work that you do in the summit, in the book. And if the goal is only to get to the top of the mountain, in this example, only to get to outer space, and we don't fathom through what could go wrong, what could go right, and plan for that, right? If we just want to get to space, we're going to explode before we leave our atmosphere, right?
Yes.
Like bye-bye. So I get so excited when I can find those parallels to the random, quote, random story as per the topic at hand, to show that this is how we function, right? It's the scientific method. Like, there are times I just want to teach the scientific method to my clients because what's your theory? Great. How do we back it up? Are we paying attention? Did we get what we expected, or was it? And we don't do that. But if we can get our things into space under those violent conditions, we can do a heck of a lot more with our time here on Earth, right? If we can just say, I want to get to the top of the mountain. Awesome. What do I need to get there? How long could it possibly take? Who can help me? What kind of stuff do I need to put in my pack? What am I willing to endure? And if we're not asking those questions, we're going to be on someone else's mountain and there might not be room for us, or there might not be provisions, or we will be like, damn it, now I got to climb down and go find mine. And I mean, to be true, honestly, I hope we're always climbing mountains. I hope I'm always finding an angel's landing in a park or in my life. And I say to people, I hope I'm never fulfilled. And they're like, what? I want to be satisfied. I want to be curious, but I don't want to be like, okay, I'm done. To your point, you have all these goals. You may never get to all of them, but you're trying, you're doing a lot of them. So real quick, another quick shift from that. You're doing a lot of them, but what would you say is your favorite, most meaningful song, perhaps that you've written, but what part of your music really represents you? Would you say?
Oh, I love all my music. No, that's not true. Actually, I have plenty of songs that I don't like. But okay, what comes to mind instantly to answer this question, it's not my favorite song that I have written. However, I did write a song called Destiny. And I think one of the reasons why I like this song personally is I know the story and message behind it. Maybe as a listener, you're like, it's a song.
Yeah.
But for me, I was, sitting on my porch back young Aliki years, early 20s, and feeling this spiral. And it's funny because you asked me the question of what, made me want to write this book was how do I deal with the spiral of life?
Mm-hmm.
And that was me in that moment. I actually wrote a song about that spiral that, you know, we are resilient as, these as a strong tree. But like a tree, there are many branches that
Mm-hmm.
extend. And each of those branches are a different thing or a different passion or a different desire or a different goal that I'm constantly reaching towards.
Yeah.
And how do we, choose which branch we're going to put more water into or more
Mm-hmm.
resources into?
Yep.
And it's that life struggle. And so I wrote a song called Destiny where it's, come down from that tree, come down from that ever, spiraling cluster of trying to figure out, what am I doing with my life? Am I on the right path? I don't know where to go. I'm so, frustrated. Come with me and, let's actually set a sail. Let's get in a boat. We got to work hard if you want to get to where you want to be and actually make actions, not just thinking about these branches on the tree constantly, but
Yeah.
get in a boat, set a sail, and make your destiny happen. And all of those words I just said are actual words that are in the song.
I love it.
But this is the first time I'm, I guess, explaining to someone that all of those were actually from a real
A real moment.
place. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
what advice would you give that 20 something Aliki? Now, and I want to preface this by that does not change the trajectory of your life, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that I don't want anything different, but that would better inform her or help make it a little easier, perhaps. What would you tell her in
Ooh.
that moment, sitting on that porch writing that song?
I I would have told her, I would have loved to have learned to leverage mentorship and accept,
Mm.
um like, it took too long for me to realize that it was okay to just learn, that it was okay to embrace failure, it was okay to accept that I wasn't perfect,
Mhm.
to accept where there was opportunity for growth and to go ask for it, to be willing to not be so afraid, right? And yes, I don't want to say as a woman and put myself in that thing,
Mhm.
but it was hard. I was one of 6 women in my graduating class of 150 people at my
Wow.
university.
Wow.
And yeah. And so I feel like the way I grew up through life, the way I went through engineering, the way I jumped into a career, I just felt like I was always being compared or trying to be something because, oh, you're this bubbly, colorful little child, this girl. That's what I am. I just like to be excited. And in
Mhm.
the engineering world, they don't, I don't look like everybody
It's not
else
normal.
usually.
Yeah,
It's not as
you
normal.
stick out.
I stick out. And so that brings this, that always brought this fear and challenge for me. And I wish I had learned so much earlier to just throw all that out and to learn to embrace
The
letting it go
imperfection
and
of
learning
Alaki.
the imperfection, to learn to embrace the true meaning of my name, which we discovered in this call. That I was born to be imperfect and to bring something
Oh,
greater to the world. And that's
so
it, right? Like
beautiful.
me learning to write this book and do my music and hopefully, change someone's life one step at a time. That's
Mm.
what I want to do.
Well, so now that we're all excited about it, and I need to go get this book, can you please tell us how to find the book? Where can we buy it? And what's the best way to connect with you if they'd like to hear your music, see your art, and just
Absolutely.
explore more Alaki?
So I do have a website. So www.conqueryoursummit.com. At that website, there's links to where to buy the book. There's a bio page, which has links to my music, links to, my artist work, because I'm also a muralist and I love to do
Mhm.
all that work. You can go there and connect with me, my travel blog, all that fun stuff. But if you're looking to just get started and you want something to, use, I do have a free like planning template that I give to people, which you can, go to my website and it's, conqueryoursummit.com/resources. That will give you
Perfect.
the
And I'll
template.
throw it in the show notes
Yeah,
too.
perfect.
Yeah.
And so that's an easy way. But yes, I am on social media at
Mhm.
the Summit Method, both Instagram and TikTok, and posting some YouTube videos here and there,
Mhm.
and doing lots of podcasts. So
I love it. So we'll close today. I like to ask this question, and I don't tell people ahead of time. I will, but I love the Tim Ferriss Show podcast, and he often asks the question at the end. Provided your services, your book, your products are all properly marketed, if you could have a billboard that says one thing to the millions of people in this world today, what would you say? You're welcome to change your answer tomorrow, but what would you say today to the world? And feel free to
okay.
take your time.
Okay. Well, immediately my brain's like, what are all the billboards that I've seen in my life that have made a difference to me? Um, it's funny. I have two answers. I'm going to use my fun, silly answer first. One
Okay.
time, I would love to have a billboard that just has like a beautifully iconic like symbol on it, but something that's so intriguing. You drive by, and you're like, what is that? And it just
Mm.
makes someone want to look something up
Be
or think
curious.
curiosity versus,
Yeah.
all the advertisements that you see out there, right? But it would just be something very silly
Mhm.
and with the objective of making people just smile, right? Or just take a moment outside of whatever
That's the
hustle they're in
muralist in
driving down
you.
the
That's
road.
the
Yes,
muralist of
that's
just
the
look
muralist
for
of me.
just look for a
Just a
second and
moment.
think.
Yeah. But
Okay, so what's the second?
the second, or a more realistic billboard, I would put a short quote. I think there's enough things out there trying to sell you this and that. I actually would take that opportunity to fill some of my life purpose, which is help others, or help them kind of make a better day for themselves. And maybe something like, you know, be kind. It's
Mhm.
it's free to be kind.
Mhm.
Make one change today. Like something that's just a couple of words that you
Very
could
simple.
read and you reflect in that moment, and
Mhm.
maybe you went to work that day with a better mindset or a better mood, or you were going to meet family, or you were
Mhm.
headed to the gym, whatever it might be. A quote that was going to give you something to think about.
Mhm. I love that. Going back to Tim Ferriss, he often says when he closes the show, be kinder than you need to be. And I really like that. Like, you know, kind, we can be kind, but being kinder than you need to be, it's not just about like opening the door for someone, it's opening the door and smiling at them, right? Like just that tiny little bit of humanity and connection, which, points to the culmination of your pillars and such, which is the community, right? What community are we building? And if none of my people are climbing their mountains, we're all going to drown in the valley, like,
It's
so
real.
I want people to climb. I want my neighbors to climb. I want my kids to climb. And I love when people help with the tools and resources to do that. So, in all the ways that you show up and serve, I am very grateful that whatever part of you that might have been fearful wasn't quite as loud as the part of you that wants to be creative and expressive and colorful and all kinds of imperfectly perfect Alakai. And I think our listeners today are going to have a sense of that. And I really hope to drive home that we are not fixed. We are not permanent, right? Like every day we get to choose what form of expression we want to bring. And sometimes it might be a very small thing, like making your bed or, you know, painting a picture that might be terrible, right? But it's just the finding ways to express ourselves, even when we have a job that doesn't like allow for that. But you are a living example, and I really encourage people to check out your social media and see all the fun things that make you up. But I'm really grateful. I told you I like to start and stop with gratitude, and I'm really grateful that you have chosen the path of resistance, of challenge, of the exploration, because you've given a gift to us to help make it a little easier. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me here today. This has been fun conversation. I got a lot out of it. I hope you got a lot out of it. And more
Always.
importantly, we hope that all of your listeners enjoy and
Absolutely.
find their next one step.
Absolutely. What a great way to leave it. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Wherever you are all off to, I hope you make it a great day. Thanks so much. And that's a wrap on another episode of And All the Things. If you enjoyed today's show, please like and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you really liked it, please go ahead and rate it. Then think about who in your life might also need to hear it and any of the other episodes we have shared. Then share it with them. When you find something meaningful, something valuable, you've got to share it and pay it forward to those you care for. Thanks for joining us, and follow along on Instagram at MyJoyCoach to see more of me, your host, Michaela Birdyshaw. And as always, make it a great day.